I'm going to show you how you can use a general purpose AI tool like Claude to review a summary judgment motion just like a judge would and have the results actually be good. The specific example I'm going to show you is a motor vehicle tort case from the state of New York. All the facts here are made up. This is not a real case, but it's based off of a lot of real cases I've been reading in this niche. I just kicked this off, and while it's running, I wanted us to think a little bit about what it actually means for somebody to grade a summary judgment motion. Think about it from the judge's point of view. How can a judge actually rule appropriately on a summary judgment motion in a niche like motor vehicle torts in New York? What do they have to know? Well, to start, they have to know the relevant statutes. And in New York in particular, one of the most important ones is insurance law section 5102D. Obviously, they would have wanted to read that. That's going to be important. But more important is going to be the case law. Over the past few years, what have the courts actually been saying about what it means to litigate this issue in practice? What are the main cases? The judges are going to have read all of those. They're going to have to understand the fact patterns in those cases and understand what the different courts are actually ruling on the particular fact patterns. Not only that, but they're going to need to make sure that the cases that they're referencing are particularly relevant for the appellate division that they happen to find themselves in. Once they understand all of that, they can read the actual motion and apply the grading framework that is somewhat implied from the primary sources. In a nutshell, they have to read a ton of primary sources and they have to read the right primary sources. Then they need to figure out how to actually grade the motion. The reason a lot of AI tools struggle with this, even legal focused ones like Harvey and Ligora, is that when you ask it to grade a motion or ask it a legal question, you're really asking it to do two things at once. It has to first find all the relevant primary sources, read them and digest them. And then based on what it found in those primary sources, it then needs to go and apply the legal framework to the new facts of whatever case it's looking at. And it turns out part one is actually a lot harder than part two. Finding the right primary sources and then figuring out how to synthesize them is much harder for the AI to do than applying a known framework to a set of new facts. So what I'm going to show you is what I've actually uploaded into Claude here. You can think of it as a little brain attachment that I've added here. It is called NY Motor Vehicle Defense, and we're going to see a bunch of different files. I want to go over them with you because they are very easy to understand. In the references, I've preloaded up a bunch of cases and statutes. This is based on research that I've been doing. I'm sure if you litigate in this particular area, you've got a lot of cases that you like to cite and you know all the relevant statutes. So if we click into the statutes, we'll go into New York and we go into the insurance. We're actually going to see insurance law 5102D. And it's going to be a TXT file. And I'll go ahead and open this in the browser. It looks a little ugly if you're a human reading this because it's just raw text, but this is the ideal format for Claude. It doesn't have to search the web. It doesn't have to convert any files. It's just got the full text of the law in plain text format. I've got a lot of different statutes here as well. You can see here I've got some civil procedure here. I think I've also got some vehicle and traffic laws, which is relevant if you're having to do a liability analysis. I've even got some federal statutes, like here we have the Graves Amendment in full. And then under cases, I've got a lot of primary sources. And again, this is based off of research I've been doing in the niche. If we pick on this case here, we can go and open it in the browser again just to see what it looks like. And again, I know it's a little ugly if you're just a human reading this, but this is the entire text of this particular opinion, and it is now fully accessible Claude. Again, no web search, it's pre-packaged up, and Claude has it directly at its fingertips. So this entire references folder is us ahead of time pre-packaging all of the primary sources that it's going to need instead of waiting for it to do that when you ask it a question. This is going to remove one of the main failure modes and by far the most important failure mode. But we can do better than that because we don't want Claude to have to read 100 cases every time we ask it a question and all of the relevant statutes. We can actually create topics for each of the issues. So if we click in here, we're going to notice that we have liability, Graves Amendment, serious injury. These are all different sub-issues that might pop up in a motor vehicle tort in New York and that commonly do. If we click into serious injury, we're going to see this further broken down into files. And I'm going to open one of them for you. We're going to focus specifically on the 90-180 day. And if you take a look, we've got a file discussing only the 90-180 day category. And it's talking about what this issue means in practice. So this is the distilled knowledge that comes from the primary sources. And all of the main primary sources that it got this information from are completely linked here. So what that means is when we ask Claude to do something about a motion and it detects that the 90-180 day category is argued, it's going to understand that it needs to read this file. And then this file is going to tell it how to actually evaluate the issue. And if the fact pattern is novel enough, it's actually got all of the primary sources that it can reread again to evaluate it and make sure that we're getting grounded results. And again, there's a lot of cases here. And if you were doing this at your firm, we could tailor this exactly how you want it. But this is going to be a good checklist, basically, and allow us to make Claude apply the same decision-making framework consistently across all of our motions. But that's the main thing we're going to be loading into Claude's brain and what we've got over here. So now let's actually go and look through some of its result. And you're going to see that it's reading some of these different files. It's understanding that, oh, hey, this motion was talking about 90, 180 day. Let's actually dive into that topic. And then now here, we've also instructed Claude, which is also part of the brain I uploaded. I told it, hey, this is how we're actually going to evaluate a motion when the user tells us to do it like a judge. And it's obviously figuring out what appellate division we're in. It's talking about all the papers that it read. And then it's going to give us its actual ruling. And again, this is obviously not legal advice. This is just for reviewing something before you were to submit it. And it's telling us, okay, it granted the motion for significant disfigurement, but it denied the 90, 180 day category. And if we go down here, it's actually going to cite all of the primary sources, and it's going to give us links. And these are public links. This is not Westlaw. This is not Lexis. And if we open this guy in a new tab, this is going to go directly to the New York Senate website where you can read the primary sources. And then all of the cases as well directly link to Court Listener because this is bundled up. So again, Claude didn't have to go to the web at all to do this. It didn't need access to any third-party data. We actually pre-packaged everything we need to know about this legal niche, and we gave Claude access to it. And that allows it to really evaluate any new fact pattern against the primary sources. And if we go down here, we're looking at its actual analysis of the 90, 180 day. And it's telling us that while we did have good facts in our deposition, which again was totally fake, the second department requires a little more proof than just a deposition. And in particular here, it's saying that we didn't connect it enough to the doctor's report. And again, all of these cases are cited. You can open them in Court Listener, totally free for you to look at. Now, after we get the analysis, it's going to actually tell us what we could do to change the outcome. And again, this is not always possible based on the facts, but it's a good thing to check over before you actually submit a motion to the court or if you're reviewing something that an associate gave to you. Now, this example was focused on New York motor vehicle torts. This sort of framework generalizes to any niche where the volume is high and the law does not change very much. Of course, that's not to say the law doesn't change in a niche like motor vehicle defense. In fact, I think there is some legislation that just passed in New York that is actually going to change insurance law 5102. But in a lot of cases, the new fact patterns apply to known legal frameworks. And it's not like you need to do a lot of research every time you get a new case. What really happens is you need to do a lot of research once, keep that research up to date, and then continue applying that research to new cases as they come in. So I think this goes against what you're seeing with a lot of the way people think about legal AI. They think that it needs to have access to a massive database of cases. They think that it needs to be specialized for the law. I think that's completely wrong, at least for high volume niches like motor vehicle defense. It's not that you want to give Claude access to Westlaw and have it do ad hoc research for you every time. If the law doesn't change that much, you actually don't want Claude doing research. What you want to do is do the research right and package it up in a way that's easy for Claude to access so that when you're using it day to day, it's not doing research. It's just applying the law that you curated for it, and it's using its reasoning capabilities, which are very, very good. The other thing is, if you operate in a particular niche like motor vehicle defense, you don't care about state law in Oregon or random treatises about European law. Having a database with 10 million cases does not necessarily help you. In fact, it can especially hurt you when you use AI because now AI has a lot more to look through when it needs to find the right primary sources. You're better off having a curated corpus that's all relevant and all actually useful to the AI rather than giving it access to a giant database and hoping that it finds the right stuff. If you wanted Claude to answer a legal question or analyze this motion in a way that was consistent with how you did at your firm, you would have to hope that it was able to find all the primary sources that are relevant to you. Much better to give it access up front and then let it apply the framework. If you're a defense attorney in New York who works in motor vehicle torts, and you already use a tool like Claude and are interested in installing a workflow like this to assist with review or drafting or any other task, let me know because I can install this for you in Claude under 15 minutes, totally free. I'm going to leave my email in the description. Shoot me a message if you're interested. And if you operate in another high volume niche, but you're not in New York or you don't do motor vehicle defense, reach out anyway because I could probably build you a corpus and have you using a system like this very, very quickly.